We need to talk about love, not the kind of love we've been handled by culture, not the kind of love we've watched other people model, not the kind of love that left us confused, anxious, and empty. We need to talk about real love because a lot of what we learned about love was not true. We learned that love hurts, that love betrays, that love disrespects, that love humiliates, that love abandons. We don't say those things, but our behavior displays it. We learn that love makes us anxious, that love makes us beg, that love requires us to shrink, that love requires us to suffer to be chosen. Many of us accepted those things in the name of love. We called our endurance love. We called our self abandonment love. We called our fear love. We called our attachment love. We called intensity love. We called chemistry love. But today, we're correcting a fundamental myth that has been passed as truth about love. And that myth, pretending to be the truth, is that love hurts. Love never hurts. Anything that hurts is not love. It's fear, it's ego, it's control, it's unhealed pain. It's a wound acting like a teacher. This video is not here to shame anyone, myself included, for believing the wrong things about love. We believe what we were shown. We did what we thought love required. But now we're healing, and healing requires that we change. Healing requires letting go of what isn't and accepting what is. Healing has a way of making us honest, honest in light, honest in God, honest in love. So we're going deep today. We're going to bring clarity. We're going to bring God back into the center of love. And we're going to learn how to give love without losing ourselves and how to receive love without bracing for pain. Let's begin by going to the source because we can't define love without God. If we're going to define love, we can't start with humans because we didn't create love. We have to start with the source. Love didn't come from romance. Love didn't come from desire. Love didn't come from people behaving well. Love came from God. Scripture teaches us that when we say God is love, we're not just speaking poetry. We're speaking about our origin. We're speaking about where all that is and ever will be begun, which means we cannot fully understand love without understanding God's nature. And this is where a lot of the confusion happens. We say God is love, but in truth, what we have done is imagine human love. We imagine conditional love, punishing love, love that withdraws, love that manipulates, love that gives affection and then takes it away. But God's love is not emotionally unstable. God's love is not controlling. God's love is not abusive. God's love is not humiliation. God's love is steady. It's holy. It's faithful. It's protective. God's love above all is true. So when we say love never hurts, we're not dismissing the reality of suffering. Instead, we're clarifying what love is based on who God is. Because if we agree that love comes from God, love then has to look like God. Love carries God's character, and that becomes our reference point. Not culture, not trauma, not what we tolerated, not what we survived. God, only God. God is love. I know that took some time, but I really had to drill that in before we get into the topic of how to give and receive love. So now let's bring it back to the reality of being human. The feelings you feel are definitely real, but feelings are not a substitute for love. This is important because it's a crucial place where we get misled. We start calling feelings love. We start calling experiences love. We started calling chemistry love. We started calling attachment love. And yes, feelings are real, experiences matter, chemistry exists, but I'm not trying to take any of that away. What I do want us to realize are that the feelings themselves, they are not the love. The experiences themselves, that's not the love. The chemistry itself is not the love. These things, they come and go, they fluctuate, they change, but love never does. The nature of love never changes because the nature of God never changes. Love is constant because God is constant. Emotions change, experiences end, chemistry rises and fall, it pushes and pulls away, but real love always remains. Real love has a nature. Real love is God's nature. Real love has a posture. It produces fruit. Real love produces peace. And when I say real love, again, I'm speaking about what is true. It is only another term to say God's love or true love because God is love and God is truth and God is reality. So, if we are being honest about love, we can confidently say what it produces because what God produces is what love produces. Love produces clarity. Love produces safety. Love produces truth. It produces honor, patience, kindness. And if what we're calling love produces confusion, fear, dread, humiliation, disrespect, anxiety, then we're not seeing love clearly. We're seeing something else wearing love's name. Let's talk about the Bible and the cross because I think it's important to honor the foundation while also offering depth. So, I want to talk about Jesus for a moment, and we're going to talk about him with reverence. Just to be clear, I'm a Christian and I very much value the Bible. I'm not here to dismiss the Bible, but there are certain things about the Bible that are misconstrued that need correction. Again, I'm not here to offend anybody who hold tightly to the truth that Jesus died for our sins. I believe that. I honor that. It matters. I just disagree with the definition of sin. The crucifixion is not something I have any intention of minimizing. It's sacred. In my walk with Christ and in learning about his ministry and the lessons he came to teach on earth, I have found that the religious church often miss a crucial part of the purpose of this crucifixion. But we're going to correct that today. We can hold Jesus died for our sins and still see the additional layers of what God was revealing through him. Because the Bible itself, it's layered. Jesus' life was teaching, his ministry was teaching, his love was teaching, his forgiveness was teaching all the lessons we needed to learn. His courage, his resurrection, all of these things were things that had powerful lessons that we needed to learn. So, yes, the cross speaks about atonement, but the cross also reveals something deeper about love's power. And this is where I want you to pay extra close attention. What it shows is that even betrayal could not stop love. Even violence could not defeat love. Even death could not end love. The crucifixion was needed. It was an extreme measure to show the power of love. The resurrection is not just proof of doctrine, it's a revelation of the reality of God, the reality of love. The crucifixion and the resurrection is proof that love is stronger than fear, that God's life is stronger than death, that what is of God cannot be destroyed. So when we say love never hurts, we are not saying suffering never happened. We are saying suffering was never the essence of love. Let me say that again because the power in this video is in how to give and receive love. If you go back to the thumbnail and the title of how I title this video, it says love never hurts because hurt it's not the essence of love. It has no power. It doesn't even exist in love. There is no hurt in love. Love was present through Jesus' suffering. It wasn't defined by it, and that changes how we interpret what we've been taught about love. Because many of us learn that love equals pain, but Jesus shows us something else. Jesus shows us that love can remain holy even in a world that wounds. And if we're going to follow Christ, we're not meant to copy the suffering. That is not what Jesus died for. We are meant to embody love. It's not the suffering that proves love is real. Rather, it's the power of love that gets us through the suffering. We're meant to embody truth. We're meant to embody mercy. We're meant to embody courage. We're meant to embody discernment. Now, I also want to talk about another book, A Course of Miracles, that I know some Christians feel a little iffy about, but there's a lot to learn. And I want to speak about A Course in Miracles, not as a replacement for the Bible, not as a weapon against Christianity, not as a way to sound smart or anything like that, but as a lens that helps some of us see love more clearly. Because what the Course insists on again and again is this: when we are not in love, we are in fear. And fear disguises itself. Fear can look like obsession, jealousy, control. Fear can look like needing constant reassurance. It can look like emotional manipulation. It can look like people pleasing. Fear can look like overgiving, like staying silent to keep the peace. And when we name fear as fear, that's when we start calling it love. And that's the gift. That's the treasure. That's the miracle. I love the Bible so much, and I was raised in the church. Unfortunately, so many words were lost in translation. So many words that were really fear, control, and betrayal were substituted for love. I thank God for miracles. I thank God for truth. I thank God for love. One thing that I love about A Course of Miracles and also about the Bible, well, let's talk about A Course of Miracles now, is how it defines miracles as a shift in perception from love to fear, from illusion to truth. One of the many things that I love about the Bible as well is how it calls us to transformation, to renewal, to being made new. So we don't have to force a bridge here. We can simply say both are calling us back to love, back to God, back to truth, back to peace. And the fruit will show us what's real. The world today is so confused, and that's why we need clarity about what love is and what love is not. Let's make it plain. Love is not abandoning ourselves. Love is not being in a constant state of fear. Love is not giving and giving and giving until we're empty. Love is not shrinking, it's not begging. Love is not accepting being disrespected and calling it devotion. Love is not betrayal. Love is not manipulation, humiliation, control, none of these things. Love is truth. Love is honor, patience, kindness, protection, consistency. Love is safety. Love does not confuse us. It doesn't degrade us. Love does not require that you betray yourself. And when we are choosing love, one of the holiest questions we can ask is, does this bring me peace or does this bring me fear? Let's slow this part down because this question changes everything. I'm going to repeat it again so that it can sink in deep. When we are choosing love, one of the holiest and most powerful questions we can ask is this question right here. Does this bring us peace or does this bring us fear? I'm not talking about excitement versus boredom here. I'm not talking about intensity versus calm. I'm not talking about attachment versus loneliness. When choosing to give or receive love, there's only one intention and there's also only one result: peace or fear. Love always aligns itself with peace. Fear is never the language of love. Now, here we need clarity because a lot of us misunderstand peace. Peace does not mean there's no conflict. Peace does not mean everything feels easy at all times. Peace doesn't mean there are no hard conversations, that there's never any tension or disagreement. Peace simply means there is no threat. Peace means we can remain ourselves even when things are comfortable. We don't have to disappear to stay connected. We don't have to perform to be loved. We don't have to abandon our truth to keep the relationship intact. That's the difference. Fear, on the other hand, it always carries a threat. It says, if I say this, I'm going to be abandoned. If I set this boundary, I'm going to be punished. If I'm honest, they'll be angry at me and I'll lose them. Or if I slow down, somehow somebody's going to replace me. It also says, if I'm fully myself, I won't be chosen. Fear may show up quietly, but it's always there. It lives in the body, in the tightening, in the hypervigilance, in the walking on eggshells. It lives in constant monitoring of tone, timing, and reaction. Many of us confuse that state of living in fear with love because it feels familiar. We grew up learning that love requires adaptation, that love required vigilance, that love required self editing. But love doesn't require us to live in survival mode. Scripture tells us that perfect love casts out fear. Not some fear, not surface fear, not a little bit of fear. Love casts out fear, all of it. Which means if fear is present, love is not expressed in that moment. Now, when this occurs, it doesn't mean we judge ourselves or the other person. It means we pause, we get curious, we ask ourselves gently, what am I responding to right now? Because sometimes fear shows up not because the other person is unsafe, but because we have been wounded before. Sometimes fear shows up because something is misaligned. This is why peace is such a holy compass. Peace doesn't shout, it doesn't rush, it doesn't demand. Peace grounds us. Peace provides clarity, compassion, and understanding. Even in conflict, peace says, I can speak my truth and still be okay. I can listen without losing myself. I can stay present without betraying my values. Fear always asks us to trade ourselves for connection. Peace never does. So, when we're discerning love, we don't ask, do I feel butterflies? Do I feel chosen? Do I feel needed? We ask and said, can I be myself here? Can I rest in this relationship? Is this a relationship, a person where I can tell the truth? Can I grow here without being punished for it? Because love that is aligned with God does not threaten our becoming, it supports it. It may stretch us, yes. It may challenge us, of course. It may call us to accountability, yes, to growth, to learning, but it will never require self erasure. Fear based connection keeps us small, love based connection keeps us whole. And this is why peace is not some passive little thing on the background. Peace is not avoidance, not silence. Peace is safety. Safety to speak, safety to change, safety to be honest, safety to remain. So when we ask, does this bring us peace or does this bring us fear? We're not asking a shallow question here. We are asking a discerning question. We are asking a God centered question because God's presence brings peace, not confusion. God's love brings clarity, not dread. God's love does not threaten our identity. And when we choose love, real love, love that models the nature of God. We feel that, not always as comfort, but always as non threatening. We don't lose ourselves. We don't brace for constant chaos. We don't live waiting for the other shoe to drop. This love is where we can remain safe, complete, and whole. That's how we know we are choosing love instead of fear, wearing love's name. Many of you who are watching this video are in a romantic relationship. So let's take a moment to talk about couples. Let's discuss how love became so confusing in a romantic relationship and how we heal. I want you to take a deep breath and listen with an open heart and an open mind. Because romantic relationships is where many of us were wounded. When we talk about couples, marriage, long term partnership, covenant love, this is often the place where love became confusing, heavy, and painful. Not because we didn't care, not because we didn't try, not because we didn't love deeply, but because we were taught distorted versions of love and told they were holy. We confuse love with possession. We confuse devotion with control. We confuse commitment with monitoring. We confuse loyalty with access. As well, we confuse intimacy with sex and entitlement. And when those confusions enter a relationship, love begins to feel unsafe. Where there is no safety, there is no love. We've seen relationships where someone says, I love you, but what they really mean is, I need to feel safe and I will manage you to get that safety. Another thing that someone might say when they say, I love you, it's not really saying that they love you. What they're saying is they need access, they need monitoring, they need proof. They need to know where you are, who you're talking to, what you're thinking. They need to know how you feel about them at all times, not because they are loving, but because they are afraid. They have a fear of abandonment, a fear of betrayal, a fear of not being good enough, a fear of losing control. So instead of learning how to self soothe, how to trust, how to communicate insecurity honestly, fear turns outward and it becomes control. People who are afraid punish with silence, they withdraw affection to regain power, they withhold warmth until compliance returns. And a lot of us didn't recognize this as harm because it was never loud. It was, subtle, under the surface. It was emotional. It even was spiritualized. But punishment is not love. Withdrawal is not maturity. Silence used as a weapon is not peace. It's fear trying to protect itself. When this happens, leadership also becomes distorted. This is also where we must speak honestly about leadership, especially in faith-based relationship. Because many of us were taught that leadership means authority over another person. We confuse leadership with dominance, we confuse leadership with entitlement, and we definitely confuse responsibility with control. But biblical leadership was never about domination. Christ like leadership has always been about service. It's humility, protection, accountability. It's emotional responsibility. Jesus did not lead through fear. He did not lead through intimidation. He did not demand submission. He invited trust. And as a result of trust, people submitted and followed him. He welcomed being in service to God, himself, and others. That's what leadership truly is. So, if a leader in a relationship creates an environment of fear, silence, shrinking, or self betrayal, that leader is not aligned with God. Leadership rooted in love creates safety. Submission is also a topic that's so misunderstood, and we have to talk about it because submission was never meant enduring disrespect, staying silent in harm, losing agency, obeying another flawed human being at the cost of the truth, disappearing the essence of you just to keep the peace. That's not submission. Submission was meant to be voluntary trust, not forced compliance, not fear based obedience, not self erasure. True submission can only exist where love is safe. Because submission without safety is not submission, it's survival. God has never asked any of us to survive love. He asks us to flourish in it. If someone says, if you love me, you would submit, but their version of submission requires you to disappear, silence yourself, tolerate fear, that is not God's design. It's fear hiding under spiritual language. There is a wound that festers when control and self erasure merge. And we need to go deep here because this is where the illusion breaks. Here is the truth we don't often say out loud. When leadership becomes control, the wound underneath is insecurity. And when submission becomes self erasure, the wound underneath is fear of abandonment. And if we're honest, many of us, myself included, have lived on both sides of that wound. One person is afraid of losing power, the other person is afraid of losing safety, of losing love. And instead of healing those fears, the relationship organizes itself around them. One becomes dominant, the other becomes accommodating. And slowly, both people lose themselves. That's not love. That's trauma bonding wearing a sacred costume. We have to call it what it is because God cannot heal what we keep calling holy but truly isn't holy. So let's discuss control, the control wound, and what it really is. Control is not strength. Control is panic pretending to be leadership. Control is a person who does not trust God, does not trust themselves, and does not trust love. So they try to manage the outcome by managing the person. Control says, if I can just monitor you, I'll feel safe. If I can just correct you, I'll feel secure. If I can just keep you close enough, you won't leave. Control is fear that never learned how to rest. And sometimes control looks loud. It looks like you can't wear that. Don't talk to them. Give me your password. You're not going there. But guess what? Control can also look spiritual. It looks like someone saying, I'm the leader, so you need to follow. It can also look like someone saying, that's disrespectful, when you know that what they're referring to really isn't disrespectful. Or they say something like, a real wife wouldn't do this, a real husband wouldn't question me. But what's really happening underneath is not leadership, it's insecurity holding a crown. It's wounded ego trying to become God. God never called us to dominate someone into safety. That's not love. That's fear using authority as a coping mechanism. And there's the other side too, the self erasure wound, the person who keeps shrinking, the person who keeps adjusting, the person who keeps saying, it's okay when it's really not okay, the person who stops bringing up feelings because the reaction is too costly. The self erasure wound shows up in the person who learns to be easy so they can be kept. That's not submission, that's survival. Self erasure is not humility, it's fear dressed as devotion. It's the part of us that believes love must be earned. It's the part of us that says, if I'm too honest, then I'll lose them. If I set a boundary, then they'll leave me. If I take up space, I'll be punished. If I stop overgiving, I won't be chosen, I won't be valuable. Self erasure is the wound that thinks abandonment is always right around the corner. So we become smaller, we become quieter, we become agreeable, we learn how to disappear politely, and we call it peace. But peace is not silence, not in this way. Peace is safety. If we can speak without consequences, that's not peace. That's a threatening environment. Love does not thrive under threat. Let's be honest about how this becomes a dysfunctional relationship held through the bonds of religion. Now, listen closely. This is the terrifying part. When control and self erasure meet, they create a system, a dysfunctional relationship held with the bonds of religion. It's a set of unspoken rules that both people start living by. Rules like don't make them mad, don't ask for too much, don't question the leader, don't bring up the past, don't disrupt the peace, go along to get along, keep them happy so they don't leave, stay small so you don't get punished, be strong so you don't get rejected, and tada, tada, tada. And when this happens, the relationship becomes less about love and more about maintenance, less about intimacy and more about management, less about God and more about control. And we stay in it because we call it commitment, we call it devotion, we call it faith. God is not the author of dysfunctional relationships. There is nothing about dysfunction, control, and self erasure that reflects God's nature. God has no part of that. God is in truth, in love, and freedom. And any relationship that requires captivity to function is not of God and it is not of love. Then you might ask, why do we call it love? We call it love because it's familiar. Because some of us grew up in homes where love meant walking on eggshells, where love meant pleasing the emotional climate, where love meant staying quiet, reading moods, managing other people's emotions, where love meant becoming someone that needed to keep the peace. So when we meet a partner and the patterns repeat, we mistake familiarity for destiny. But familiarity is not the same as God. Intensity is not the same as love. And pain is not proof that there is love. A relationship that keeps breaking us is not refining us, it's revealing what is unhealed. God does not call us to be loyal to our destruction. That's why it's so important to get to the raw truth and figure out what we're really afraid of. Let's say it plainly. The controlling person is afraid that they are not enough. The self erasing person is afraid they are too much. One is trying to secure love through dominance, the other is trying to secure love through disappearance. But neither one is giving nor receiving love. Both are negotiating for survival. And I want to take a moment to highlight something here. In our culture, we tend to see the person who is doing the controlling as the villain and the person who is doing the self erasure as a victim. We are speaking strictly about wounds here. And the truth of the matter is, none is better than the other because they are both two sides of the same coin, because those are two wounded people. A relationship is built on survival is not a love story. It's a coping mechanism. It's fear trying to feel safe without doing the work of healing. God is calling us out of that, not to shame us, but to free us. We need to pull ourselves out of the delusion and into God's truth. Here's the truth of God: love does not require anxiety to stay, love does not require silence to survive, love does not require control to feel secure, it doesn't require that we betray ourselves. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Love is patient, love is kind, love does not insist on having its own way. Love is not easily angered. Love keeps no record of wrongs. Love rejoices in truth. That's scripture. So if we are calling love impatient, cruel, controlling, easily angered, manipulative, threatening, and punishing, we are not describing love. We are describing fear. God is not asking us to keep calling fear love just because we're attached to the story. God is asking us to tell the truth because the truth is where healing begins. In order to heal, we have to do things differently. So, what do? We have to stop spiritualizing dysfunction. We have to stop calling control leadership. We have to stop calling silence submission. And we also need to stop calling shrinking holiness. There's also the other one where we're calling anxiety passion. And we definitely need to stop calling betrayal self betrayal a lesson we have to endure. We need to make a complete turnaround and return to God as the source. In doing so, we ask, does this relationship bring me peace or does it bring me fear? Do we feel safe to be ourselves or do we brace ourselves? Do we feel honored or do we feel managed? Do we feel free or do we feel trapped? God produces freedom. Love produces freedom, not confusion, not captivity, not chronic stress. Freedom. If freedom is missing, God and love are not present. We can love people without losing ourselves. We can be devoted without disappearing. We can be committed without being controlled, and we can stop calling trauma bonding holy. Because God is not, again, God is not the author of confusion. God is love, and love never hurts. So we sit with this question. Have we ever tried to keep someone by shrinking ourselves and calling it love? Have we ever tried to keep someone by controlling them and calling that love? Have we ever called dominance leadership? Have we ever called silence and agreement submission? If we have, we do not condemn ourselves. We bless ourselves for waking up because clarity is a miracle and real love is never afraid of clarity. It welcomes it. There's another aspect of love that's important in our discussion, and that is self love. For many people, self love is the hardest one, but it's also the holiest type of love after God's love. Self love can be hard for many of us, not because we don't care, not because we're cruel to ourselves on purpose, but because we were taught directly or indirectly that loving ourselves was dangerous. Many of us learned how to give love long before we learned how to receive it. We learned how to show up, how to sacrifice, how to pour, how to be dependable, how to be the strong one. And somewhere along the way, we learned to disappear quietly in the process. Many of us give love to everyone except ourselves. We excuse what hurts us. We minimize pain. We say it's fine when it really is not. We tolerate disrespect because we don't want conflict. We overextend because we don't want disappointment. And the worst is when we abandon our own needs because we were taught they were secondary. And we didn't call that self betrayal. Unfortunately, we called it love. But that is in the past. No more. Here is the truth we have to face gently and honestly. That was not love. Once again, that was survival. No one wakes up and abandons themselves. It's something we were taught to do over a long period of time. Most of us didn't wake up one day and decide not to love ourselves. We learned it. We learned it in environments where love was conditional, where affection came and went, where being easy felt safer than being honest, where our needs were inconvenient, where our emotions were too much, where we had to earn closeness, so we adapted. We learn how to read the room, how to anticipate moods, how to shrink ourselves just enough to stay connected. Back then, it was a skill we needed to survive, and we don't have to judge ourselves for that. This skill kept us safe once, but what once protected us has now cost us our peace. Self-abandonment become a habit when it goes unchallenged. It teaches us to confuse endurance with maturity. We confuse silence with strength. We confuse self-denial with holiness. But denying yourselves is not the same thing as loving ourselves nor loving others. This is why self love feels so uncomfortable for so many people. Self love feels uncomfortable because it interrupts old agreements. Agreements like my needs don't matter, I shouldn't ask for too much, I should be grateful for whatever I get. If I take up space, I'll lose love. So, as we grow, we learn and we become and we heal. we start honoring ourselves, guilt shows up. We feel selfish for resting. We feel wrong for saying no. We feel dramatic for naming hurt. We feel anxious for setting boundaries. But guilt is not conviction. Guilt is often conditioning, resisting in change. Anytime you take on a new identity, a new behavior, there's always going to be that force that pulls, that resistance that doesn't want you to become who God has called you to be and who God has created it to be. God doesn't need to convict us to harm ourselves. God convicts us to return to truth. Self love begins with God. And here is the truth we cannot bypass. If God is love and God dwells within us, then love must include us. There is no version of God's love that excludes the one he lives in. We cannot claim to honor God while neglecting the vessel he placed his spirit in. Self love is not vanity, it's not arrogance, it's not indulgence. Self love is stewardship. It's how we care for what God entrusted to us. Your body is not an obstacle to holiness. Your emotions are not distractions from God. Your needs are not an inconvenience to love. They are all part of the life God gave you to steward. And stewardship requires attentiveness. Here's what self love actually looks like. I know it's an action to bring self love, but self love itself is not affirmations without actions. Self love is not pretending everything is okay. Self love is truth. It's noticing when something hurts and not gaslighting yourself out of it. It's honoring your limits before resentment builds. It's resting before you collapse. Self love is asking yourself questions like, does this cost me my peace? Does this require me to disappear? Does this feel aligned with God's love or fear? Self love is choosing yourself even when it's uncomfortable because you know God never asked you to abandon yourself to be worthy. Self love is choosing to live the highest expression of the divine in you. It's time to heal. It's time to return to ourselves. Healing begins when we stop asking, how much can I tolerate? How much can I take? And start asking, what honors the life God gave me? Healing starts when we stop measuring love by how much we can endure and start measuring it by how much peace it produces. We heal when we allow ourselves to matter again, not above others, but alongside them. Loving ourselves does not take love away from anyone else, it corrects the flow. Love is meant to move through us, not drain us. And when we love ourselves, we become a safer place for others to love too. This is the wisdom we must carry forward about self love. We are not selfish for loving ourselves, for caring for ourselves. We are faithful. We are not wrong for having wants and needs. We are human. We are not failing love by choosing ourselves. We are honoring God. Self love is not the opposite of love for others. It's the foundation that makes all other love honest. Because love that excludes us was never God's design. Love begins within. This is how we give love without losing ourselves. We give from fullness, not depletion. We don't give to earn a place. We don't give to avoid abandonment. We don't give to control outcomes. We give with truth. We give with boundaries. We give with consistency. And yes, love does involve sacrifice sometimes, but not self destruction. A boundary isn't a lack of love. A boundary is love with wisdom. We can be devoted and still be discerning. In doing so, we also learn how to receive love without fear. Receiving love is holy work for people who had to survive because receiving requires softness. And softness back then felt dangerous and maybe still does for some people who have not yet healed. So we practice receiving slowly. We let someone care for us without earning it. We let someone show up without suspicion consuming us. We let someone be consistent without waiting for the trap. And when fear rises, we don't shame ourselves. We tell ourselves the truth. We are safe now. We are wiser now. We don't have to abandon ourselves to be loved now. Receiving love is not losing power. Receiving love is letting God restore our nervous system. That's love. That's a miracle because love is not separate from miracles. Love is how miracles arrive. A miracle is not only something dramatic or supernatural, a miracle is restoration to truth. A miracle is the return to love where fear once lived. Every time we choose love instead of fear, we participate in a miracle. When we give love without losing ourselves, that's a miracle. When we stop abandoning ourselves to keep connection, that's a miracle. When we speak truth instead of shrinking, that's a miracle. When we walk away from disrespect without hatred, that's a miracle. When we forgive without returning harm, that's also a miracle. When we receive love without bracing for pain, that's a miracle. Because fear once ruled those places, and now only love does. Miracles are not about escaping life, they are about healing how we live it. Miracles are the moments where love replaces survival, where peace replaces threat, where truth replaces illusion, where God's way replaces fear's way. This is important because we are not entitled to miracle because we earned them. We are entitled to miracles because we were created in love. God is love. God's love is our inheritance, which means restoration is not a reward, it's a return. A return to how love was always meant to move through us, a return to safety, a return to wholeness, a return to God. This is how love heals us. This is how miracles unfold quietly, daily, faithfully. Not by forcing change, but by becoming love again, by choosing love again and again and again and again. That's love. That's the miracle. So today, we let this be the truth in clarity. Love never hurts. What hurts us was not love. We are not ashamed for believing the wrong thing. We were taught, we were wounded, we were surviving, but now we are returning to the source. Now we are learning the love of God, not the love we projected unto God, not the love humans model when they were unhealed. We are learning God's love, the love that lives in us. So we keep shedding what love is not, and as we do, love becomes truer, love becomes easier, love becomes clearer, love becomes safer. We learn to give love without losing ourselves and receive love without fear. We are safe to love, we are safe to be loved. I want to take a moment to speak a blessing over your life today. May your life be a reflection of the love of God that breathes and lives in you. I love you. I'll see you in the next video.